End of apartheid. Early negotiations from 1990 to 1991. Mandela embarked on a tour starting with African countries, and he continued to Europe. From there, he went to America. From America, he went to Asia, visiting India and Japan, not the Soviet Union, a long-time ANC supporter. In May 1990, Mandela led a multiracial ANC delegation into preliminary negotiations with a government delegation of 11 Afrikaner men. The negotiations led to the Grote Schuur Minute, in which the government lifted the state of emergency. In August 1990, in Pretoria Minute, Mandela offered ceasefire after recognizing the MK's severe military disadvantage, and was criticized by MK activists. At the 1991 ANC National Conference, where he was elected president of the ANC, Mandela admitted that the ANC had many faults and announced his aim to build, I quote, a strong and well-oiled task force, unquote, for securing majority rule. In 1993, Mandela moved to Hoti, a mostly white suburb in Johannesburg. Violence between ANC and Inkatha supporters increased. Mandela argued that there was a third force within the state intelligence services fueling the slaughter of the people, and he publicly blamed de Klerk for this, whom he increasingly distrusted for the Sebokeng massacre. By not visiting the Soviet Union, Mandela might have been trying to avoid the communism influence, since the National Party was totally against it, while on the other hand, it could be seen as a way to silently dump communism ideology. But he visited the socialist Cuba. Since the beginning of the negotiations, Mandela negotiates fearlessly and is not afraid to take independent decisions in his capacity as a leader of the ANC, and can publicly blame the state president, the state that he was in negotiations with. The classism of South Africa finally swallowed him when he moved to Hoti. Karl Marx stated that those who stay in palaces do not feel the problems of those living in shacks. The Convention for a Democratic South Africa began in December 1991 at the Johannesburg World Trade Center, attended by 228 delegates from 19 political parties. ANC was led by Cyril Ramaphosa, but Mandela was a key figure. After de Klerk condemned the ANC's violence, Mandela took to the stage to denounce de Klerk as the, I quote, head of an illegitimate, discredited minority regime, unquote. The talks were dominated by the ANC and National Party, and little was achieved. CODESA 2 was organized in 1992, where de Klerk wanted a federal post-apartheid South Africa, with a rotating presidency to ensure protection of ethnic minorities, while Mandela wanted a unitary government, determined by majority rule. After the Boipatong massacre, Mandela called off the negotiations, but the violence increased to such an extent that he decided to resume the negotiations. Finally, de Klerk and Mandela agreed that a multi-racial general election would be held, resulting in a 5-year coalition government of a national unity and a constitutional assembly that gave the National Party continuing influence. The ANC also considered to safeguarding the jobs of white civil servants, Such concessions brought fierce internal criticism. The two agreed on an interim constitution based on a liberal democratic mode, guaranteeing separation of powers, creating a constitutional court, and including a US-style Bill of Rights, and divided the country into 9 provinces, each with its own premier and civil service. This was a concession between de Klerk's desire of federalism and Mandela's desire for unitary government. However, the talks were disrupted by the Concerned South African Group, COSAG. For the successful democratic process, Mandela and de Klerk were awarded with Liberty Medal by Bill Clinton. Soon after, they shared the Nobel Prize Peace in Norway. Thabo Mbeki influenced Mandela to start meeting with big business figures and drop nationalization, fearing that it will scare away much needed foreign investment. Although criticized by the ANC socialist members, he had been encouraged to embrace private enterprise by members of the Chinese and Vietnamese Communist parties at January 1992 World Economic Forum in Switzerland. The CODESA talks were, however, in favor of Mandela, even though the political landscape was still volatile. The Communist parties of China and Vietnam advised Mandela in a right way because they had experience of what they were talking about. General elections in 1994. The ANC campaigned using the slogan, I quote, "A better life for all," unquote, promising the electorate universal education, reconstruction and development program to build 1 million houses in 5 years, expand water and electricity access. But it is said that this had no funding plan. The ANC opened people's forums countrywide at which Mandela could appear as a popular figure with great status amongst black South Africans. He proposed the voting age be reduced to 14 and that was totally rejected by the ANC. Mandela and de Klerk managed to convince Inkatha to enter the elections and stop secession efforts. The ANC got a landslide victory of 63%, winning in 7 provinces with Inkatha and National Party, each taking 1 province. The ANC used Mandela to capitalize on the black electorate, promising people who needed a complete reform basics of the basics as they did, shows that they were taking advantage of the politically illiterate, poor, traditional black South African. The entire manifesto of the ANC must be scrutinized, however, so that appropriate conclusions can be made. But the little that is mentioned reveals a vision rather than a plan. Mandela's presidency from 1994 to 1999. On 10 May in Pretoria, Mandela is inaugurated as the President of South Africa. The event was televised to 1 billion viewers globally. He headed the government of national unity, dominated by the ANC, which had no experience of governing by itself, containing representatives from National Party and Inkatha. By virtue of winning 20 seats, other parties were invited by Mandela into the National Assembly. Mandela moved into the presidential office at Tennessee in Cape Town. De Klerk settled at Genandendal. Mandela also built a house in Gunu village. At some stage, he noted that the media of South Africa is overwhelmingly owned and run by middle-class whites, and believing that it focused too heavily on scaremongering about crime. In December 1994, he published Long Walk to Freedom. Like any other African country, South Africa was governed by its natives. He showed the spirit of Ubuntu or brotherhood by donating a third of his annual income. But how significant is the spirit of Ubuntu amongst the black societies? Even the capitalists have Ubuntu. Mandela saw national reconciliation as the primary task of his presidency. I quote, "Having seen other post-colonial African economies damaged by the departure of white elites, Mandela worked to reassure South Africa's white population that they were protected and represented in the Rainbow Nation." Unquote. He tried to create a broad national government of national unity. However, de Klerk and Mandela had trust issues. In January 1995, Mandela heavily criticized de Klerk for giving amnesty to 3,500 police officers just before the election, and later rebuked him for defending former Minister of Defense Magnus Malan when Malan was charged with murder. Mandela personally met with widow of Verwoerd, Betsy Skumbi, and pursued, and laid a wreath by the statue of Afrikaner hero Daniel Theron. Emphasizing personal forgiveness and reconciliation, he announced that, I quote, "Courageous people do not fear forgiving for the sake of peace," unquote. He encouraged black South Africans to support the Springboks during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. Winnie Madikizela Mandela accused the ANC of being not helping the majority of black people. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was formed to investigate crimes committed under apartheid by both the government and the ANC. Praising the commission work, Mandela stated that, I quote, it has helped us move away from the past to concentrate on the present and the future," unquote. National reconciliation is one of the greatest things for the post-apartheid South Africa, but the ANC-led government has failed to sustain it. But there is a need to read the Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act number 34 of 1995. Domestic programs. Mandela's administration inherited a country with a huge difference in wealth and services between white and black communities. With a population of 40 million, about 23 million lacked electricity or enough sanitation, and 12 million lacked clean water, with 2 million children not in school, and a third of the population illiterate. The unemployment rate was 33%, and about 50% lived below poverty line. Government financial reserves were almost depleted, fifth of the national budget being spent on debt repayment. In 1996, the RDP was replaced with a new policy, growth, employment and redistribution, which maintained South Africa's mixed economy but placed an emphasis on economic growth through a framework of market economies and the encouragement of foreign investment. Many in the ANC deemed it neoliberal policy that did not address social inequality, no matter how Mandela defended it. Mandela's government adhered to the Washington Consensus advocated by the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. In 1996 and 1997, welfare spending increased by 13%. In 1997 and 1998, it increased by 13%. And in 1998 and in 1999, it increased by 7%. The government introduced the equality in grants for all communities. After 5 years in democracy, ANC had achieved basic needs of poor communities. The Land Reform Act 3 of 1996 safeguarded the rights of labor tenants living on farms where they grew crops and grazed livestock. Mandela's administration was criticized for failing to combat crime and corruption. Skilled white workers emigrated from South Africa due to increasing crime rates, higher taxes, and the impact of positive discrimination towards employment of black people. This led to brain drain, and Mandela criticized those who were leaving. At the same time, South Africa was flooded by illegal migrants from poor parts of Africa. Although public opinion towards these illegal immigrants was generally unfavorable, characterizing them as disease-spreading criminals who were a drain on resources, Mandela called on South Africans to embrace them as brothers and sisters. The fact that Mandela's administration inherited a crippled country is not entirely correct. The country had huge socio-economic disparities. The government debt was huge, and perhaps amongst other things, the debt was due to economic sanction. But that is what Mandela and the ANC knew. Unemployment rate and population illiteracy were both high. Basic education was not compulsory. Apart from that, apartheid was all about the oppression of other races, especially black Africans. The administration of Mandela also inherited a South Africa that had governance systems, a strong military, many SOEs, industrialized mixed economy, public universities, etc. The Land Reform Act of 1996 overlooked the oppressed, the security of tenure of natives, and failed to liberate economically oppressed former Bantustan dwellers. Instead, it led to a dwindling of subsistence farming and ensured that dreams of the previous regimes are realized. On the other hand, it is absurd for political parties to pride themselves about just ensuring physiological needs of the citizens are met. Mandela's administration also caused the brain drain. Apart from that, the opening of the borders for illegal immigrants was a slap in the face for the majority of South African citizens.